I thought my life was over, a divorce, a dead-end job, and nothing to show for it. But then I met Bella, a lost little girl with the biggest heart, and she turned my world upside down in ways I never could have imagined. Life had never been particularly kind to me, even before that moment. I grew up in a small town, juggling college classes and part-time jobs to make ends meet. Hard work was second nature, but there was always this nagging emptiness, like something was missing. Marriage came along, not out of love, but more out of a sense of duty. That decision drained the little passion I had left for life, leaving me with days that felt more like a checklist: go to work, maintain the house, keep up appearances. The inevitable divorce came as no surprise. I'd been stuck in a job that barely held my interest, doing just enough to get by. Things at home weren't much better. My wife at the time, Sheila, had grown increasingly distant. Then, one day, I came home to find the house emptied. Sheila had moved in with someone else, and just like that, my life crumbled. The years that followed were a haze, an exhausting attempt to rebuild something that had never been stable to begin with. Which brings me to a typical morning in Honolulu, seated at my regular spot in Starbucks, sipping a frappuccino the baristas knew to prepare without even asking. The warm Hawaiian air clung to my skin, a mix of serenity and restlessness in the tropical breeze. It had been 5 years since Sheila left me, and that thought gnawed at the edges of my mind as I sat outside under the shade of a palm tree. The skies were the kind of clear that only Hawaii could offer, the mid-70s temperature just enough to remind me that I lived in paradise, even if it didn't always feel like it. One of the baristas cheerfully brought over my drink. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she chirped, earning me a few side eyes from the people in line. Maybe my regular tips softened their irritation. The breeze rolled in, carrying that unmistakable salty tang of the ocean. Funny thing about Hawaii, no matter where the wind comes from, it always carries the Pacific with it. I tried to focus on reading the Wall Street Journal at my little outdoor table, but my thoughts kept drifting. My driver, Keanu, sat nearby, leaning back with his eyes closed, as if testing the durability of his eyelids against sunlight. I envied his ease. As for me, I couldn't stop replaying the last 5 years in my head. Yep, 5 years since Sheila packed up and left. Back then, I'd been living in Western New York, grinding away as a tech for a big manufacturing company. It was a far cry from this tropical scene, but even now, with palm trees swaying and ocean air swirling around me, I couldn't help but feel like I was still picking up the pieces of a life that had unraveled long ago. I'll admit, I wasn't exactly the model employee. My performance at work was consistently mediocre. I wasn't ambitious, and I never went out of my way to impress anyone. Once I finished a task, I'd sit around, waiting for the next one, instead of taking initiative. Most days, I just kept my head down, blending into the background. One day, after completing my assignments, I was aimlessly browsing the internet at my desk when my supervisor walked into my cubicle. "The department manager wants to see you," he said. It wasn't a common request, and something about the way he said it made me uneasy. We rode the elevator in silence to the manager's office. When we arrived, his secretary, Margaret, greeted us with a polite smile. "I believe Mr. Martin is on a call. He'll see you shortly," she said. That, shortly, turned into a grueling 30 minutes, easily the longest half-hour of my life. Finally, we were ushered in, but the meeting was anything but cordial. There was no small talk, no invitation to sit down. Just a cold, direct statement. "Jim," the manager began, glancing down at some papers on his desk, "you've been with us for," he paused to check the details. 15 years. "I regret to inform you that we no longer need your services. You'll receive a year's severance and any accrued vacation in your next paycheck." And just like that, it was over. I'd been fired. I walked back to my desk in a daze, packed up my things, and left the building, my mind reeling. How was I supposed to start over at my age? What was I going to tell Sheila? The rest of the day blurred together. Somehow, I ended up at a bar, drowning my sorrows in one too many doubles. When the bartender suggested I'd had enough, I knew I should head home. Carefully, I got behind the wheel, determined to avoid adding a DWI to my already catastrophic day. But when I pulled into the garage, I didn't stop soon enough. The car plowed straight through the back wall. I sat there, trying to make sense of it. In my drunken haze, I figured Sheila must have had some renovation work done, but the noise of the crash didn't bring her running out like I'd expected. I stumbled out of the car and into the house. The kitchen was empty, completely stripped. The table, the chairs, even the appliances were gone. For a moment, I thought we'd been robbed. But as I moved into the living room, I saw the same stark emptiness, save for a pile of my belongings dumped in the center of the room. Still, my sluggish brain didn't connect the dots. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom, only to find it in the same condition, completely bare. Well, almost. My clothes were piled in a heap on the floor. As I got closer, a terrible smell hit me. It was urine. The stench was overwhelming, and in my drunken state, I couldn't hold it together. I vomited right onto the pile. Disgusted and disoriented, I stumbled back downstairs and collapsed on the carpet. I didn't fall asleep so much as pass out. When I woke up the next morning, I felt like death. My head throbbed, my mouth was dry, and every muscle in my body ached from lying on the floor. As I tried to gather myself, I noticed Sheila's car was gone. I wandered into the kitchen, hoping for some coffee to clear my foggy head, but even that was gone. She'd taken it with her. It took me a moment to process the silence and emptiness around me. Then I spotted it, a note left on the counter. I picked up the note and started reading. Jim. We've been married for almost 14 years, and in that time, you've proven to be a complete disappointment. You're not a good husband, provider, or lover. You're selfish and only care about yourself. I've moved in with my lover and will be contacting a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Sheila. I stood there, staring at her cold, scathing words, feeling a mix of anger and humiliation churn in my gut. Deep down, I wasn't surprised. Sheila worked as a legal secretary for a big law firm, and I suspected her lover was one of the attorneys. She likely planned to use the firm's resources to bleed me dry. Thank God we didn't have kids. Still fuming, I looked around for the house phones, only to realize she'd taken all of them. At least I still had my company cell phone, they hadn't asked for it back yet. Out of spite, I called the bank. A helpful woman on the other end froze all our joint credit cards, checking, and savings accounts, and blocked the debit card. When I hung up, a small smile crept across my face. Sheila was going to lose it when she found out she couldn't access any of the money. I tried to pack a few things, but she'd taken almost everything. All the luggage was gone, and I couldn't even find a garbage bag to use. Sheila had left me with practically nothing. Frustrated, I decided to head to my favorite bar. The bar was owned by my best friend from childhood, the only person I trusted completely. If anyone could give me solid advice, it was him. Bartenders tend to know how to untangle life's messes, and I needed some clarity. The divorce process itself was brutal. Sheila had aimed for alimony, but since I was unemployed and broke, the judge showed me some mercy and waived it. Thankfully, no one asked about the severance check. On the surface, it might have looked like Sheila came out ahead, but in reality, the house was underwater on the mortgage, the savings account had barely $1,000 left, and the checking account had been drained by monthly bills. To top it off, Sheila had maxed out most of the credit cards. I could only assume she'd gone on a spending spree before filing for divorce. In the aftermath, I was determined to rebuild my life. I worked with my financial advisor to set up trusts, manage investments, and lock away funds in a way that Sheila couldn't touch. It took nearly a month to finalize everything, but once it was done, I felt like I had a fighting chance. A few weeks later, I started looking at properties in Hawaii. I was drawn to the hills near Hawaii Kai, a beautiful suburb of Honolulu. It took nearly a year, but I eventually found a luxurious place that felt like the fresh start I desperately needed. One day, while grabbing coffee at a local cafe, I noticed a woman sitting by herself, looking uneasy. She seemed lost, unsure of her surroundings. I caught the attention of one of the counter staff and asked, through some improvised gestures, who she was. The barista asked around, but no one seemed to know. I couldn't just leave her like that, so I approached her. She looked close to tears, so I offered her a soft smile and handed her my clean handkerchief. She took it hesitantly, holding it as if unsure what to do next. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness can be the first step in changing someone's day, or even their life. I gently wiped her tears with my handkerchief. She gave me a small, grateful smile as she handed back the now slightly damp and wrinkled cloth. Wanting to shift the mood to something lighter, I asked, "How about some water?" She smiled faintly in response. Encouraged, I took her hand, and we walked together into Starbucks. As we approached the cooler, one of the baristas noticed us and quickly made her a small caramel frappuccino. Bella, as I'd started to call her, took one sip and her face lit up with joy. "Grazie," she said softly to the barista, her Italian accent unmistakable. We returned to my outdoor table, where she sat beside me, savoring her drink slowly, as if each sip was a luxury. While she seemed more at ease, I couldn't ignore the responsibilities looming over this situation. Not long after, a Honolulu police cruiser pulled up. I waved to the officers, signaling them over, and explained the situation as best I could. "This little girl seems lost or abandoned," I said. The officers started to assess the situation when an irate child services worker arrived on the scene, shouting almost immediately. "Why did you make me wait so long? You've wasted my time," she yelled at the officers. The scene quickly escalated, with tempers flaring on all sides. Bella, visibly frightened, clung to my side. Not wanting her to feel more distressed, I gently took her hand and moved her away from the commotion. Then, out of nowhere, the child services worker pointed at me and screamed, "He's stealing that child. Stop him." Her accusation sent a jolt through me, but I remained calm. Pulling out my phone, I made a few quick calls. I'd been a major donor to the governor's campaign and figured it was time to cash in on that favor. I explained who I was and outlined the misunderstanding. The officers seemed to relax after confirming my identity and returned to their patrol duties. Together, we brainstormed a solution. It was agreed that Bella would stay with me temporarily while they searched for her parents or relatives. In the meantime, they would continue looking for an Italian translator to help bridge the language gap. My driver, who had returned to my house to handle some yard work, came to pick us up. The rest of the afternoon turned into an impromptu shopping spree. Bella needed clothes, and Alamona Mall was the perfect place to find a new wardrobe. We spent hours picking out outfits for her, and though it was exhausting, her delighted smiles made it worth every moment. By the time evening rolled around, we were both famished. I suggested we try Antipasto's, an Italian restaurant on South Beretania Street in downtown Honolulu. I hoped someone there might speak Italian or at least know someone who did. While no one at the restaurant spoke Bella's native language, the owner, a fourth-generation Italian, promised to keep an ear out for any Italian speakers in the area. The food was incredible, and Bella seemed to agree. She practically devoured an entire pizza, her small frame deceivingly capable of handling so much food. Watching her enjoy herself brought a rare moment of peace to what had been a chaotic day. As we sipped coffee after the meal, Bella chattered away in Italian, her voice bright and animated. I didn't understand a word, but her enthusiasm was contagious. She held up her cup of coffee, waiting for me to take a sip, her gaze intent on making sure I enjoyed it as much as she did. Smiling, I lifted the cup and took a sip, letting her know she had my full attention. I took a sip of coffee, smiled wide, and said, "Perfetto," with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. Bella's face lit up, her grin stretching from ear to ear. That single moment of shared joy felt like a bridge between us, and it filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Before I could say anything else, I noticed Elani, my housekeeper, standing in the doorway. She watched the exchange with a knowing smile. "Way to go, boss," she teased. "Now, go take a shower while Bella and I handle breakfast." Elani had a way of commanding the room, and her confidence reminded me of my mother's advice: always listen when a woman gives you a task. With Bella happily chattering away in the kitchen, I decided to take her suggestion. Later that morning, while Bella and I enjoyed a leisurely breakfast, we were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. A woman's voice called out, "Excuse me, could I borrow some milk for coffee and my child's cereal?" I opened the door to see one of the new tenants staying in the guest house, a young family who had moved in the night before. From the little I knew, the wife was the breadwinner, holding a high-profile position as a national news anchor. The husband, I suspected, wasn't entirely thrilled about their temporary accommodations, especially with a small child in tow. After helping them with their request, we returned to the kitchen, where Bella had nearly finished her breakfast. Just as I was settling back in, my phone rang. The caller introduced himself as the Italian ambassador. "I understand you found the child of one of our citizens," he began. "Yes, sir," I replied, recounting how I'd found Bella and everything we'd done since. He listened attentively, occasionally murmuring in acknowledgement. Once I finished, he politely asked to speak to Bella. I handed her the phone, and she immediately lit up. "Pronto," she chirped. For the next half hour, Bella chatted in rapid Italian, her responses punctuated by enthusiastic "sis" and the occasional burst of laughter. I watched her intently, catching only snippets of her side of the conversation, but her joy was contagious. Finally, she handed the phone back to me, her face glowing with excitement. "She's very lucky to have found you," the ambassador said warmly before summarizing their plans to locate her family. In the meantime, I decided Bella deserved a proper bedroom, so we planned a trip to Alamona Mall. Our new neighbors joined us for the outing, though the husband looked less than thrilled about spending his day shopping. It didn't take much convincing to drop him off at a golf course on the way. Bella's excitement grew with every step we took at the mall. When I mentioned we'd be getting her a new bed, she cried tears of joy and eagerly led me to a store where she'd spotted a pink bedroom set she adored. Her enthusiasm was impossible to resist. By 3 p.m., we arrived home to find a large moving truck waiting in the driveway. Bella's new furniture had arrived. The movers were already unloading it when Bella marched straight up to the largest of them and began speaking to him in Italian. He didn't understand a word, but her charm was enough to win him over. Moments later, they were walking hand in hand into the house, Bella leading the way to the bedroom next to mine. Once the room was set up, Bella pointed at the bed's big stuffed bear and said, "Poppy." Then, pointing at the doll on the dresser, she smiled and said, "Bella." That simple, heartfelt gesture moved me to tears. Seeing my reaction, Bella reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out the handkerchief I'd given her the day before. She walked over, gently tugged me down to her level, and wiped away my tears with the same care I'd shown her just a day ago. That night, as Bella settled into her new room, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. It was as though fate had brought us together to heal each other's wounds, one moment at a time. I wore pajamas to bed, knowing full well I might have a late-night visitor. Sure enough, Bella came padding into my room, but this time, she wasn't scared. She just wanted to cuddle. I wrapped my arm around her, and we both drifted off peacefully. Later that week, I received an email that would change everything. Gina, a child philologist who had been following Bella's case, was coming to visit. Bella was overjoyed when Gina arrived, proudly giving her a grand tour of the house and showing off her pink bedroom. The day flew by as Bella and Gina chatted non-stop, even through dinner. Their bond was immediate, and they seemed to understand each other perfectly despite the language barrier. After dinner, they disappeared into the back of the house, and about an hour later, they returned. Bella was dressed in her pajamas, and Gina wore a long housecoat. Both looked fresh and relaxed, as though they had just spent the last hour enjoying a spa day. Bella kissed me goodnight and said something to Gina in Italian. Gina chuckled, then turned to me. Bella wants to know if you're still going to tuck her in tonight or if you plan to do that for the rest of her life. I nodded, smiling at the question as I processed it. Bella seemed so young and vulnerable that I assumed she was around 5 or 6 years old. Gina, however, shook her head. Actually, she's closer to 10 or 11, based on what I can tell, she said. Gina went on to explain her background. She had studied in Rome and Switzerland and specialized in child development. Bella is essentially a blank slate, Gina said. We have a unique opportunity to help shape her into a confident, productive member of society. Hearing this only strengthened my resolve to help Bella in every way I could. Over the coming days, Gina proved to be an incredible influence. She was always by Bella's side, teaching her and blending Italian with English in a seamless rhythm. Before long, Bella started responding more in English, her progress evident in the little exchanges they shared. Then, one day, the UPS driver arrived with several large boxes filled with schoolbooks. Gina had arranged for homeschooling and wasted no time setting up a small classroom in one of the spare rooms. Bella threw herself into her lessons with enthusiasm, spending at least 4 hours each morning learning everything from math to English grammar. Meanwhile, Gina and I spent long evenings discussing Bella's future. Despite the Italian government's best efforts, they had been unable to locate any family for her, no parents, no siblings, no relatives. Bella was, for all intents and purposes, an orphan. The alternative was grim: if no one stepped forward to adopt her, she would be sent to an Italian orphanage. I'll adopt her, I said without hesitation. The Italian ambassador chuckled on the other end of the line. I knew you would, but I had to ask. He promised to start the necessary arrangements but then added a question that caught me off guard. What about Gina? He asked. The question lingered in my mind long after our conversation ended. Gina had been instrumental in Bella's growth and happiness. Her patient, nurturing presence had become integral to our little household. But was I ready to make such a significant decision about our dynamic, knowing it would shape Bella's future? Gina and I talked late into the night, discussing every possible angle. Ultimately, we agreed the decision couldn't be ours alone, it had to be Bella's. If Bella didn't choose me, if she didn't see this place as her home, the adoption wouldn't work. Over the next month, Gina became more distant, giving Bella and me the space to bond. It was a quiet and reflective time, but I knew the weight of the decision would shape all our lives forever. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, unsure if I had ruined everything. But one morning, when Keanu and I returned from grabbing coffee, Gina and Bella were waiting at the door. Gina's smile reassured me more than words ever could. In those days, we tried to find a balance between family time and carving out moments for ourselves. I even researched summer camps for Bella, hoping Gina and I could have some alone time. Unfortunately, there weren't any suitable overnight camps nearby. So, we focused on building a routine that worked for all of us. The next couple of years flew by. Somewhere along the way, Bella started calling Gina and me Mommy and Daddy. We hadn't even noticed when it began, but hearing it felt right. Gina eventually moved into my bedroom permanently, and Bella stopped coming to us at night. Our little family had solidified, and life felt complete. Bella began attending school with kids her age and quickly fit in. She made friends effortlessly, and before we knew it, our house became the go-to hangout spot. It was noisy, chaotic, and perfect. One sunny afternoon, while Bella was at school, Gina and I went shopping. By the end of the day, we found ourselves back at the very first store we'd visited. There, we chose an engagement ring, a simple yet elegant design featuring a single diamond surrounded by small birthstones for Bella, Gina, and me. The jeweler offered to add more stones if we had additional children, and Bella's face lit up when she heard that. Her approval was everything, and I happily paid for the ring. Once the ring was settled, Bella took charge of planning the proposal. "Poppy, you're the best dad, but you don't understand women," she said confidently. "I'll handle the proposal." And she did. Bella obsessed over every detail, ensuring it was perfect. She chose a stunning park in Waikiki for the ceremony and even arranged for a Catholic priest to officiate. The reception was set at my country club, and what started as a guest list of 200 quickly ballooned to over 400. Bella, of course, was the bridesmaid, while Keanu served as my best man. Close friends, Gina's colleagues from the Italian embassy in Washington, and even Gina's family from Italy, her sister, brother, and their families, were invited. We covered all the expenses, determined to make it a celebration no one would forget. The big day finally arrived, but tradition dictated that I couldn't be home in the days leading up to it. Instead, I stayed in a hotel with Gina's relatives. They were a lively and fun group, and despite the language barrier, we bonded over my credit card and shared laughter. Then came the moment. There I was, standing at the makeshift altar with the priest, when I saw her. Gina, my soon-to-be wife, appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white. She looked like a dream, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The rest of the day went by in a blur of love and celebration. The laughter, the toasts, and the dancing, it all felt like the culmination of a story I never thought would be mine. Months later, we found ourselves in a hospital room, welcoming a new addition to our family. The stay lasted 2 days, but for Bella, it felt like an eternity. She took the day off from school and was up at dawn, ready to go. Bella supervised everything, Keanu installing the baby seat, organizing the diaper bag, and even selecting toys for her baby brother. "You're driving my brother home," she lectured Keanu, her tone serious and protective. That day, as we drove home with the newest member of our family, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. From the unexpected bond with Bella to building a life filled with love and laughter, our journey felt nothing short of miraculous. I made a mental note to give Keanu a generous Christmas bonus for his unending patience. Bella had grand plans to show her baby brother, Giorgio, all the sights on the way home, but he slept through the entire drive. A few weeks later, Bella had a routine checkup with her doctor. When Gina accompanied her, I suspected she might be giving Bella the talk, a rite of passage where dads are notably excluded. The two spent the entire afternoon in Bella's room, and by dinner time, Bella seemed back to her usual self. Gina, however, wasn't one to leave me in the dark entirely. She held my hand during the meal and gave me a look that clearly said, "We'll talk later." That night, she explained what had been discussed with the doctor, reassuring me that Bella had handled everything well. The key takeaway? Keep your mouth shut and don't embarrass her, Gina instructed with a playful but firm smile. About a week later, the doctor's office called and asked us to bring Bella back in for additional tests. While we initially thought it was a routine follow-up, the results confirmed a diagnosis none of us had been prepared for. Bella would need treatment, and that meant some big changes for all of us. In solidarity, Gina and I shaved our heads along with Bella, the three of us creating quite a sight. Bella picked out headscarves for us all, and while hers and Gina's looked elegant and stylish, mine was an eccentric mix of clashing colors and wild patterns. They snickered at me more than once, but I didn't care. If it brought even the smallest smile to Bella's face, it was worth it. One day, while we were in the thick of treatments and adjustments, I received a call from Bella's school. The principal sounded calm but serious as she explained the situation. The call from Bella's school had been unexpected. They were planning a homecoming rally and asked if Bella could attend. When the day arrived, Gina and I escorted her into the school gym. The moment we stepped inside, we were greeted by a breathtaking sight, over 200 of Bella's classmates, all with freshly shaved heads, standing in solidarity with her. Tears welled up in Bella's eyes, and for a moment, she was speechless. Each student wore a proud smile, showing her that she wasn't alone in her fight. It was one of those moments that reaffirmed the power of community and love. Life continued, as it always does. Bella's sophomore and junior years flew by, and soon we found ourselves discussing her college plans. She didn't want to go far, preferring to stay close to home, so she applied to Brigham Young University, Hawaii. The campus was stunning, nestled near the Polynesian Cultural Center, and seemed like the perfect fit for her. However, during the Christmas holidays, Bella didn't seem like her usual cheerful self. I assumed it was the stress of the season combined with the looming decisions about college. But things took a turn none of us expected. In her senior year, Bella's health began to decline. Despite everything we tried, the treatments weren't enough, and we lost her just weeks before graduation. Her funeral was held at sunrise on the beach, attended by her entire senior class. Each student carried a simple white flower lei, which they placed gently on her coffin as a final tribute to their beloved friend. I'll admit it, I cried like a fool. My little girl was gone, and there was no preparing for the kind of emptiness her absence left behind. That night, I had my first dream of Bella. She was young again, her beautiful eyes watching me intently, just like the day we'd met at Starbucks. Those eyes followed me everywhere, a reminder of all we'd shared. When I woke, the pain was unbearable. I stumbled to the bar, grabbed a bottle, and drank until I could sleep again. That became my routine for months. Every night, I drowned my grief in alcohol, hoping it would silence the memories and ease the ache in my chest. One morning, though, as I reached for another bottle, something stopped me. There, in the quiet stillness of the room, I saw a beam of sunlight streaming through the window. It fell on Bella's favorite chair, illuminating it like a spotlight. For the first time in months, I hesitated. It was as if Bella was reminding me that life hadn't ended with her passing. She had given me so much love, and now it was my responsibility to honor her by living fully. I put the bottle down and sat in her chair, feeling the warmth of the sunlight on my face. That moment became the turning point I didn't know I needed. Bella had taught me how to love, how to persevere, and even in her absence, she continued to guide me. It was time to start living again, not just for myself, but for the legacy of the little girl who had changed my life in ways I could never repay.